Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And today we ask, at what point does the DM have to hang up his kobolds?
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
So we had a message come in through a GM 911. Maybe this is more of a suggestion than a GM 911 though, and it is basically how to use weak monsters throughout the tiers of play, especially tier 4. And in this particular person wanted to know about using kobolds. So, we're going to go through some ideas. We'll talk about some things. And right off the bat, there's a famous article that was in a Dragon magazine. I forget the number off the top of my head. But if you Google Tucker's Kobolds, you will come across this article. You'll find it, reprint it probably many times.
I think, if I remember correctly, it is just tuckerskobolds.com will give you the short, sweet version of it. But, the gist is using regular kobolds, a DM just used so many of them and force the players into areas that were just completely hazardous to them. You'd lock them in a room, dozens of murder holes would open up, and Molotov cocktails, spells, loads and loads of arrows, possibly with some poison, winds up being dumped on them. And when you roll enough dice, you're eventually going to get crits, you're going to get, auto hits, and what have you. And these guys, on level 1 of a dungeon, at significant level, got their butts handed to them by a bunch of little 1 to 4 hit point kobolds.
Because these kobolds were using a lot of tactics and they weren't particularly standard out of the book. They had prepared the battlefield, and that is definitely one way you can upgrade your kobolds, give them slightly better gear, let them use tactics, lean heavily on traps, all of those. But we actually get a bunch of different kobolds. If you look at, the player's handbook, Volo's Guides to Monsters, we got Tome of Beasts. Kobold Press is probably going to show some love to kobolds.
Well, and you've also got the Revenge of the Horde from Nord Games, which is going to give you another set of variety as well.
Yeah, so we actually went and grabbed all the numbers. So between Monster Manual and Volo's Guide to Monsters, you get 5 different kobolds. Thanks to D&D Beyond, made it really easy to look that up. You also have Tome of Beasts. You're going to get 3 more with a challenge rating of 1, 2, and 4. Those ones in the Monster Manual Volo's Guide were from an 8th to 1. So, they're pretty low, but Tome of Beasts actually cranks up the power level a little bit. Yep. Revenge of the Horde has some different ones, and that is going to give you from an 8th to 1 in challenge rating as well.
Right. So, you wind up with a total of 13 kobold, or 13 different kobold entries between those 4 books, ranging from all the way from an 8th to a 4. Now, that still leaves a lot to handle if you're looking to try and get this into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 challenges. So what else can we do?
So there's a handy dandy section in the back of the Monster Manual, and actually in a lot of the different monster supplements that are coming out now, and also another section in the back of the DMG. And basically, this section in the back of those books for NPCs is just, this is a generic human. Well, the section in the DMG is like, well, what if you want to make them different? And it gives you kind of a list what you have to change for the different races. So you can take Kobold and slap it on anything from, the Archmage, up to, the Champion or whatever you want to use from those NPCs. Well, you've just created kind of a really powerful Kobold. Now, granted, you're going to want to use these sparingly, because it seems like a dick move if you have a ton of really high level, high power kobolds running around. But a couple leaders or bosses that are actually have a veteran or archmage template on top of them, your players probably aren't going to see that one coming.
You can easily add class levels to these things, and let's not ignore the half dragon template. Or any, if you're looking to go besides kobolds, any of the few templates that are out there, can be fun to play with as well. But you start stacking on these pieces, and you can create things that are a challenge. Now, you kind of have to step aside from this for a moment and say, all right, I want to use kobolds, as this, whole campaign all the way from tier 1 through tier 4. But you have to ask yourself from the outside perspective, well, how have these kobolds specifically gotten so powerful when normally they're weak and easily crushed? Is there an area that kobolds have thrived in your world and they've become such a credible threat that the heroes need to step up and do something about it before all of the kobolds wind up amassing the same amount of power and threaten the stability of the entire world? So like all of these things become necessary to figure out because your players can be like, wait a second, I hit that kobold for 37 points of damage. How is he not dead already? Like, it's going to happen because gamers tend to know that, oh, kobolds are weak as shit. Sorry.
So another concept you might want to introduce as well, where it doesn't really change that part of the kobolds, but there's swarms in the back of the monster manual that you could kind of like template your own swarm. And instead of being bats, rats, or snakes, why not base it off of kobolds? I believe Pathfinder uses a system of monsters called mobs, which you can do something similar to. So this way, when your kobolds are taking damage because they got hit by a fireball, or the fighter swings through with his greatsword, you can describe them dying by the mass. Matter of fact, it's even a little more thematic because the fighter swings and a bunch of them die, right? But it's still effectively a more effective monster because you're using it as a swarm instead of the individual components, which kind of makes sense anyway. Like if even if you are a full grown person, if you were to get swarmed by dozens and dozens of toddlers, some of them will get through and it will actually even hurt you, especially if you give them knives.
Now I want to make a swarm of kobolds. I think that would be.
I thought you were going to say a swarm of toddlers.
No, I don't think I need to go that sadistic. I like the idea of a swarm of kobolds. I think working en masse like that has got to be hilarious in a game.
Yeah, and you would just give them kind of like an area. They'd have like an area effect. They'd have an area they take up, and you would then just use multiple swarms, and you have to defeat them. Like there's certain things like area effect spells, I believe, do, or I should say, swarms are vulnerable to area effects, so they do more damage, right. And so that would still be an effective way of clearing them out. But your melee fighters, your guys just shooting an arrow. They're going to be killing them, but it's going to take them a while to reduce the effectiveness of the swarm.
So no matter what way you wind up, doing this, you use a combination of them. You use all of it. You throw in some hirelings, some other NPCs, some other monsters that wind up pairing with it. Perhaps these kobolds are more powerful because they're rearing a young dragon. And that's going to be a threat at some point in time. Gotta deal with it. Now you add things in that thematically fit well with them. Perhaps this kobold archmage has gotten so powerful that he's got dragonborn or lizard folk that have come to his call to try and team up with this guy who's accruing power. All of these thematic scaly folk could wind up rising, and then just keep throwing in those monsters that fit, and you'll be able to use kobolds and other things, with kobold being like the major theme, or this winds up being the whole same theme, and it'll all fit and flow nicely together.
Yeah, also, like you said, when you say team up, they could tame wild creatures and use them as well. Remember, kobolds have pack tactics. So once you get enough of them together, they're all rolling with advantage anyway. So your chances of getting that crit is much better. Bounded accuracy in D&D does make it a lot easier. A +3 or a +4, is going to maybe hit on a 19 or an 18 as opposed to other editions where it never had a chance. When you're, unless you're talking about the higher 20s, which is really rare in this edition. Yes, I know it can be done, but not all of the players are probably going to have
Right.
that. And that's the whole thing. Like, kobolds are going to swarm the whole area if they're using them right, if they're using those more interesting tactics, if they have slightly better gear. And Nate also introduced the idea and was discussing it with us, the idea of ascended, that dragons were all just ascended kobolds. He's got this idea where, uh, you know, there are no true dragons, or maybe there are, but that happens after kobolds have ascended and found other dragons to mate with. So he's like got this idea for alternate dragons, and if that's the case, maybe there's one of these dragons that amasses kobolds. So the kobolds are like the thing you deal with before you get to the dragon. So they're going to be whittling you down, and maybe the dragon shows up every once in a while, bolsters the kobolds, hurts the party a little bit, and then moves off, and they still have to deal with the kobolds if they want to get to the dragon. So they become almost like a hazard on your way to getting to the real threat, the main event, and that is the dragon. That may or may not have been a ascended kobold. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It's an interesting concept that Nate the Nerdarchy came up with, but I think it also might be a little insulting to dragons.
I don't. I don't know. You guys can have your own theory about whether dragons can come from kobolds or not, but that's a discussion for a later time. What do you guys think about using a low level monster throughout an entire campaign? Are there any kind of cool tips and tactics that you've used? Down in the comments below, you can continue that conversation. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over at nerdarchy.com, where we have a store.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.